only speaking thing I have to do this week is right now.
Of course.
Right now,
Of course.
when the mic is hot.
Yep.
And now, but I'm glad that the weather is.
Oh, dude. Well, I mean, it's supposed to be 99 tomorrow.
Yeah,
But at least, like,
got a foretaste of it.
yeah, well, that
Yeah.
was, I was telling people, like, y'all, it's the 6th of September. Like,
Yeah.
this month into October can still be gnarly as hell.
Oh yeah.
It's nice that we got a little taste of it, but it's like, it's just nature's way of just like,
Yeah. Hanging the carrot out there.
yeah, like just wetting the beak.
Yeah.
Like, no, Holmes, there's still going to be some upper 90s coming your way
Yeah.
really quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jarrod, I'm really glad to have this conversation this morning. Thanks for being here. To properly introduce you, you are a large-scale fine art photographer. What does that mean?
It sounds so, it can sound so intimidating or so just very generalized.
Mhm.
But no, what I specialize in is photography, large scale, meant to show big, something that's 40 inches by 30 inches or bigger, that allows, when you see it, to feel,
Yeah.
to be immersed in the area. So a lot of things that I shoot are a lot more expanse. It's not a ton of close-up things. We'll do some close-up, but if anything, that large scale on a wall just totally changes how you take it in.
Yeah.
And then the fine art side, I think, is one just to make me sound more professional. No, it's one where, for me, it befits of where the work belongs.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's in a private collector's home or whether it's in working with interior designers, galleries and showrooms. I work with a particular clientele that is looking for elevated pieces of art.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know on your website, and even just you and I talking, you have a phrase that you like to use. You've been everywhere but here.
Yeah.
I like that, but what does that mean in your words?
So, I was sitting with a friend of mine that owns 5 coffee shops in Dallas, and we were just we have very like-minded ways of going about business and creativity. And we were talking one day, and, he said this, he's like, Jarrod, it's fascinating that your stuff, I look at it and I've never seen it before. He's like, I've traveled the world. And we both said at the same time, it was this kismet thing of like, oh, you've been everywhere but here.
Yeah.
And what that really translates to for me, for my, a lot of my clientele is that, they have vacation homes.
Mm-hmm.
They travel around the world, and yet they'll see an image like the one that we have up that we'll talk about in a minute. They'll see this and they'll be like, where is this?
Yeah.
And so when I get to tell the story behind where it is, what the temperature was like that day, what I was listening to on this crazy 10-hour drive, discovering this thing, so that it personalizes it. Yeah, so you've been everywhere but here is I get to take clients to places that they've never seen before and get to show them, this quirkiness or this folk artish or Americana or practically anywhere in the world of turning a corner and seeing something for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it shows up in your work. I've been fortunate to see some of these pieces in person, but just going through your body of work, it feels like, I think of you as like a troubadour through your photography, because I see stories in every single image. I'm like, I want to hear the story behind that. And I think your body of work really is impressive, man.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm not stuck to a particular style. I have a gallery that I work with, and they say, Jarrod, we love that you're a Western photographer without being a Western photographer. For me, I find something as simple as, the the curvature of an old swimming pool with the old ladder, the old aluminum ladder that would come out and attach to the concrete, finding that curvature with a patch of grass right there, something like that, to finding an old theater out in West Texas, to, finding a tennis court in Positano, Italy, right on the shore. So for me, it's drop me anywhere on this planet and I'll show you a story that you probably haven't seen before.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah. Now, have you always been doing this, or how long have you been doing what we see in your portfolio today?
So I have doing this Jarrod Oram photography as this large scale fine art photography business is celebrating 2 years in September of 2024.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. Now, what has been in the portfolio has probably been about 5 years in the making. What my whole ethos and what this business and who I connect with is 20 years of professional life, but then also 48 years of human life and connecting and finding with people that resonate in the same way. So yeah, the genesis of really where it all came into play, I went to launch a brand in Las Vegas. This was when I was still in my corporate world. I come from a branding marketing background.
Okay.
That was totally on visual storytelling, similar video, film, ad agency, commercials. I was even back in the TRL days when I lived in New York, there were still music videos that,
I remember that.
I would be tasked with grabbing, baby blue mink coats for a rap video and some just crazy things like that. But so there's always been the visual side.
Sure.
There was a love of, I moved all around from New York to Denver, Las Vegas, moved back to Dallas. I'm originally from the DFW area, moved back in 2013. There was always this love of getting in my car and just driving out somewhere and just seeing what I found and just shooting it.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, the thrill of turning a corner and seeing something for the first time, that really came into play when I lived in New York. There's so much visual. And I was very aware that so many people just walked with like their head down. And at the time they were listening to CD players, but like they had music and that, and for me, there was always this wonderment of turning a corner and the details and the buildings and the light and everything. So that's always been one of those things that I've loved. And so just going out and shooting for fun, and then some people became interested in it. And then, I sold a couple of pieces, to friends, and sold a couple of pieces to a restaurant group. And then I moved back out to Las Vegas March 1 of 2020 to launch a brand out there, which was really awesome time to launch a brand 2 weeks before a pandemic kicks in. And so I lived in Las Vegas for 7 years. And so I moved back out there in 2020. And, I'm not a Vegas person. I don't drink. I don't gamble. So like when Vegas shut down and the world shut down, it wasn't like I was missing out. In fact, it became like my Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours of, I saw it as this opportunity of, of going on the strip when there wasn't a car on the streets, shooting it. And then getting in my car and going around the Southwest, and, Death Valley's an hour and a half away. Horseshoe Bend is 4 hours away. All these weird little desert towns. And so on weekends, I'd be out in the car for 15 hours and, really honing what it is that I enjoyed shooting.
Yeah.
And, from there, there was a gallery that had followed me. I moved back here in October of 2020, because I could still do that job from any kitchen counter. But there was a gallery showroom in Dallas that, we'd known each other for a while, and they're like, hey, when we do a show, when we get people together again, we'd love to showcase some of your work. Like, cool, we can do some like 16 by 20s and, 18 by 24s. Like, no, you got to do like 40 by 30 and big.
Yeah.
It's like, holy vulnerability. But I was like, okay, and my therapist at the time, she said, put prices on it that make you really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. And we did that and sold a couple of pieces in that show to complete strangers that weren't friends and family that were coming for the bailout. And I was like, whoa. And so, and then it just started going from there. And, come September of 2021, I was done with the corporate job.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so I spent that year doing a little bit of consulting, selling a few pieces, and going on walks. I did another show. It sold out. And, the resistance, because people were telling me like, oh, you're going to try to sell photography for a living, like all that self-limiting stuff.
Right.
At first I was biting into,
Yeah.
but then I was like, well, why? You get it in the design world of like, people are like, well, this is how we do it. And I'm like, well, yeah, but why?
Mm-hmm. Questioning
And
it.
I just got to this place of getting like insane clarity of where I wanted it to be, who I wanted to work with, and focused on that. And so went full time September 2022.
Yeah. That's remarkable. And I have to imagine that, like you said, selling out a second show, I mean, did that boost your mindset around, hey, this is happening? Or was there still kind of that, this was a good thing, but I'm still not sure that the corporate thing is comfortable and I'm stepping out here? Am I really comfortable on what I'm stepping out on?
Yeah. I mean, look, a corporate world gives you security, right?
Right.
Even though my sister put it to me very well one time, she's like, Jarrod, after each payday, you are even with that company.
Yeah.
And so, but again, it was that idea of, but here's the thing, in every corporate job, like the last few that I had, the security was making me absolutely insane. That so-called security. Because I was with people that, the word values can get thrown around loosely, but like who I am at my core just wasn't connecting. It wasn't aligned.
Yep.
And so for me, it was just this constant struggle. And so there was still that side of selling pieces to people, and then designers kind of reaching out like, okay, well, maybe I can do this as like a part-time hustle, they can pay for some travel and everything. And then it just got to this place of, I think some people call it a midlife crisis.
Okay.
I think you get to a place and point in your life to reassess of, okay, this is what I've done. Mm-hmm. Is this what I want to continue to do?
Yeah.
And, I was sitting, I've told you this before, I was sitting doing an email content strategy for a healthcare company, when I was still doing some consulting, and I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like I fell into this world. I can do it well, but I'm like, is this what I want to do?
Yeah. Because
I would see the connection that people doing things in a large scale format, I would see the reactions of people like, whoa. And like they would sit and stare at it and look at the little details with it.
Yeah.
And for me of, getting these printed and it's my own work, and I'm like, man, this is really rad. And and just building off that and finding that audience of people with that, I was like, you know what? Let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I'm looking behind you at this piece, I know the end, like, I think this is, when I think of your work, like, this is just a hallmark of I think who you are and what you're able to capture. There's so many things going on here that I love about this. I could probably talk about a number of those things, but why don't you talk about this piece and the story behind it?
So this was a classic Jarrod in July of, was it 2021? Yeah. That I woke up, and so I'll kind of find things around Texas that kind of interest me, and even all around the country. And so when I get to that area, I kind of have some points of interest, but then allow for me to go and explore. But there's this old theater in Muleshoe, Texas, which is like west of Lubbock, right on the New Mexico Texas line. It's the Wallace Theater. It's this beautiful old abandoned Art Deco theater. I was like, you know what? Let's roll. It's like 7.5 hours away. Great. Um, and so, you make that trek, you get past Abilene, then start going, into a diagonal way. Well, I came to this town called Brownfield. And I get to these towns and I love to kind of explore them because there's just all this quirkiness and so much history. And you can see where the booms were during this time period based on like the architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And this one was great because, like, as you can see, the town around my Main Street area is the streets are brick. Saw a couple of really cool things, but then I turned the corner and I saw this theater, and it was at noonish when I saw it. So the light was directly above it. It was kind of washed out. But I was just like, holy smokes, man, this theater, of like the patina on that marquee, what the story of that marquee talks about, that is so indicative of the Texas Plains,
Mm-hmm.
the decay of that theater, the sign of people can see of like, oh, that's old and broken. And I'm like, no, there is beauty in what has happened over time with that piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I think I need to get back here by like golden hour sunset, because I think something really cool is going to happen. So racing up to Muleshoe, get a couple of cool shots of that. I'm coming back, and nothing out in West Texas is by one another,
Right.
And so like I'm saying, I'm going up, it's about 2 hours up, and then I'm trying to race back. But as I'm coming home, as I'm trying to get back to Brownfield, I see this sign that's like Littlefield, the birth home of Waylon Jennings. And I'm like, I gotta stop here.
Yeah.
Music is a huge thing in mine. So this piece is called I Know the End. It's a Phoebe Bridgers song. It was released during the pandemic, and like just fit very indicative of the name of what this piece looks like. So I'm going through there, and I'm trying to be mindful of time, but seeing cool little vignettes of, these old main streets and what they were like, and what they must have been like even 40 years ago.
Sure.
Compared to what they are now. They're relics in time. But I'm like, no, I gotta get back. So I get back, and I got there, and the light, as you can see, was just coming from the west, just, kissing that side of the theater. And it's one of those moments that as I'm sitting in front of it, like I still get the feeling of just the joy of like, oh, I get to take this.
Mm-hmm.
Like this moment was waiting for me to come take this photo. I didn't come to take this. It was waiting for this light at this time. If you even look into it, like where the light is, kissing through, it's highlighting the door handles and the locks.
Yeah.
Like that was not by design at all. I don't use a tripod. My camera is a fixed lens. It is a 28 millimeter lens. So there is the zoom and everything that I have are my feet.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I can take the photo and I think I get it and kind of look. And then I get home and, I play with color and I play with shadows. That's it. I use Lightroom. I don't know how to use Photoshop. I tell people I'm the least technical photographer on the planet. It's all my feel. I have an understanding about stops and everything, but of what to use. But, and so the beauty of that was, this has a for sale sign on it, and it was sold the next month. And the people that bought it, they redid it and everything. They kept the integrity, and the mural now is like this very Instagrammy kind of like Starry Nights mural that doesn't fit with the character of the town,
Right.
with the area, with the time period of that piece. Of that theater. The theater was built in 1925. My high school vice principal reached out to me when I posted it years ago, and she told me that her mom worked at that theater.
Wow.
And that her father lived in the neighboring town, and that's where they met, so there's so many stories within places like this that goes above and beyond just this old abandoned broken theater.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is, I think, one of the things that's so impressive about all of your work is just that ability to draw people in. And like you said, everyone's got a story that when they see that, they will either want to know it or they know some part of it, and it brings like that nostalgia or that memory lane back. So I mean, it's a remarkable piece. And like you said, I mean, this is a moment in time here. You can't
Yep.
go stand there again and see this. And I think that's kind of the beauty of these Americana moments.
Yeah, and and for me, I don't go around trying to document of like things that may go away, but I definitely do try to go into towns to capture things because you don't know,
Right? Yeah.
and so I'm drawn more to the patina
Yeah.
and the wear. And
Yeah.
like I said, we were talking about signs, and I think we will, but like the artistry. I mean,
Mhm.
the artistry of that marquee with that mural behind it
Yeah.
and everything is something that just isn't created today.
Right. Yeah. And I think on that note, another, I think, subject that I've seen in your work that I also personally really enjoy is the neon lights that you
Yeah.
capture. And Chris, if we could go to the next one of those, yeah, like this, like you said, there's certain art forms that don't exist or aren't as common anymore, and I think neon is one of them. And you in this photo, there's so much happening here, but at the same time, the thing for me is just I'm drawn to the neon light. It makes me think of so many different things when I see that neon. And so, yeah, talk about this one, Jarrod.
Yeah. The artistry of neon is a foregone art, just with like a lot of handmade artisanal things
Right.
we were talking about before we started.
Yeah.
You look at photos of, you know, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, Dallas, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and down the street, all the signage is neon.
Hmm.
And that was all handcrafted. And the tubing and the gas that goes into that is such a science and such a particular skill that now it's plastic and LED, and
Hmm.
it just doesn't have that same feel. And so when you can capture, true neon still out in the wild, it's a gift.
Yeah.
So many of them now are getting taken down and put into private collections or museums, and that's great. But there's something to be said about seeing it, of where it came from.
Yeah.
This shot, both of the shots that we'll share, was one night that I spent in Sheridan, Wyoming. And these two sit on the main street of Wyoming, of Sheridan. And for me, I'll sit somewhere 2-3 hours and wait for the light to change. To me, photography side is kind of a meditative process of, I mean, when's the next time I'm ever going to be in Sheridan, Wyoming ever again? So
Yeah.
like, enjoy watching the shadows and the colors and the light change and the people walking down the street
Yeah.
and all the rusty pickups that are going up and down the road and people looking at you that, they've seen these signs their entire lives, but here's this stranger that's going back and forth shooting these signs for 3 hours. This was actually the very last shot that I took that night. I had shot a couple of signs of this rainbow bar because, I mean, like, the sign is incredible. The welcome stranger neon with it. And then so I'm walking back to my car and I look over and that hatted man is sitting there in the shadows. And so I don't do any art direction or anything
Yeah.
like that. I try to capture things in its organic native form. And like, he's just sitting there and I'm like, I don't really want to like irk him by, so I mean, I just took a couple of quick shots.
Yeah.
And normally if I'm shooting at night, I'll wait the next day to look at, I'm like, you know what, that's done. Let's put it aside. Let's get some sleep. Let's look at it with fresh eyes tomorrow.
Sure.
But I went back to my Airbnb right after. I was like, tell me I got this shot. And I looked and I was like, holy smokes, man. I'm like, yeah, just, I mean, welcome stranger with just, and I mean, the silhouette, like you cannot see his face, but
Yeah.
everything else is highlighted.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just one that I was like, I couldn't have created this on my own.
Yeah. Yeah, but you have the eye and the skill to recognize the opportunity of a moment and capture it. I think that is one of the things that I'm personally impressed by your work, because I think you could look at something and say it's a photo, like someone else could go there, stand there, and snap it. But I definitely think that there's an eye that you have and a skill set. It's an intangible thing that as you're there and you instinctively just turn around and look one more time and you capture that. Like that's just, I think that's a very impressive quality, and I think that is a distinctive thing about your work. Is it really truly feels like you captured something that will never exist again like that, and it's, I mean, I'm blown away.
No, I appreciate that. I really do. You know, my girlfriend is very supportive, and so when we go on trips, she knows that she's like, "Hey, you're working." I mean,
Yeah,
granted, like I get to go to like Santa Barbara and things like that and shoot all day, so
right.
it's not like I'm
It's
going to,
yeah,
yeah, you know,
it's
I'm
good
not just
work.
going to this, you know, small area, but you know, for me, this is almost, it's a muscle that's been trained
Yeah,
over and over again. So I'm just constant, and it's a practice of awareness.
yeah,
You know, it's definitely like, am I really being in tune with what's around me?
yeah,
Because it'd be easy to miss that guy.
right, yeah,
That's just another, you're just driving by something.
yeah,
And for me, this was you have got to be kidding moment.
yeah,
Cool thing is I get a lot of, you've got to be kidding moments.
yeah,
And I truly feel that we are given a lot of you've got to be kidding moments
right.
if we're looking for them.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great message, because, like you said, you were here for a few hours, going
Yeah.
around. And I think in our world today, things are very fast paced. It's one thing after the next. I know from my own experience previously in the corporate world, it was one meeting after the next meeting,
Yeah.
and the ability to slow down and be present in a moment for a period of time. Like you said, it's a muscle that maybe isn't worked enough, but when folks are deliberate and intentional about,
Yep.
like, exercising that muscle, I think it shows up in a lot of ways. It can show up in art and creativity. It can show up in relationships and
Oh,
family
absolutely.
life. And I think, like, that is a unique skill, maybe even something that is being lost a little bit, like traditional neon lights. But I think there is a message there about taking time and just enjoying those moments, because you don't know how many of them you are going to have, and you might miss one of those opportunities, like that you'll just never get again. So, and I think if we go to the next one, this is another remarkable. I mean, the scale of this
Yeah.
is, it's and because you do, like, this is large scale. Like, we're
Yeah.
looking at it on a monitor here, but I'm looking at this like what this would look like 60 by 40,
Yeah.
like, on a like, huge wall.
Yep.
And
It's stunning. Yeah, you know, and every time we print things out, especially on a large scale,
yeah,
no matter how many times, there's this one shot that I have that's of the neon big text in the back of the state fair. It's beautiful sunset behind. It's killer. We've printed that many, many, many times, and every time we print, it's like, holy, that's awesome.
yeah,
And like seeing, when you see it in scale, so I knew of this sign, and I was making this drive from Denver to Whitefish for a wedding, and I was like, I've never driven that part of the country.
yeah,
Let me find some markers along the way. And
yeah,
I'd known about this sign, and it was cloudy that day. And I was like, okay, but like, let me see what it comes to at night. And, there's a lot of people that go and capture, a lot of, neon around the country and everything. I try to present it in ways that go above and beyond an Instagram square or an 8x10, because this is how it's meant to be seen and felt. I mean, that bar is from, I think, like 1907 or 1911. You know, the amount of beer that's been spilled on that bar in there. And I mean, that is total cowboy land. There were 3 cowboys that were in that place going, "What are you shooting at?" And I was like, "Man, this is a beautiful sign." They're like, "Can you take our picture?" And I was like, "Okay." I was like, just, but I mean, coming to those types of things all the time.
I can imagine.
Yeah, you know, I mean, of like, this is a piece of Americana art, you know, and I think the photograph captures it in that way that is just, you know, something that just isn't created.
Yeah. And even in addition to that, not only are you capturing things that I think are, you know, some seen in a different way through a unique perspective, as I've heard you say before, or things that, you know, may not exist, you know, in another year, if even beyond that, or before that. But another thing that you do is you capture some things that kind of juxtapose different things against each other. And like this next one, I think this is Stones and Thrones.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I mean, it's the unexpected. But then as you see it, you're like, I feel transported there, and that's what I would expect to see.
Yeah. No, it's, you know, so when shooting, you know, as a photographer, it can be all about what you enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
When you're creating a photography business, I kind of need to do a one for me and one for you in that way, you know. But I also, too, I think the clients that I have the same type of sensibility, and they either get it or they don't.
Sure.
And so, again, this is in Monument Valley, right, Utah, Arizona border. I mean, every Western's been shot out there. We've seen the plateaus and everything. I went out there in February of 2023, and I mean, it's gorgeous. And the expanse of the West, to me, is just like, is absolutely amazing. When people ask me if I'm a beach or a mountain guy, I say I'm a desert guy. You know, the colors, the energy, the vibe of it, just And so, and it's a very primitive like drive through the park. It's dirt roads and everything, and I mean, you're just like, and so you're coming, this is the first rest stop to stop at, and like to the left and behind us is where you can get like your picture taken, and it's called like John Wayne's Point or something. Okay. There's these horses. I mean, it's a very kind of like a touristy stop thing, and there's cars and everything. And then, Adam, I turned around and I looked, and there was just this porta potty with just like this huge camel. I think it's called like the Camel Back Butte. And I was like, is no one else seeing this? And for me, it was the thing of like, it just brought me so much joy in that, like, capturing in that way. But also, too, I was like, the client that sees this is going to want this in one of their clients' bathrooms so dang fast. And we've put a couple of these iterations into restrooms because it's like, it's perfect in that way.
And if we could go to like the next one, because like you said, there's a few of these.
So I mean, you just have 3 of them. I just kept going around, and like there were just more. And this one was like almost like, hey, let's put this rock up to kind of camouflage it in a way. You know, and all of them were kind of in this tan hue, and they had, you know, but they had like the park emblem on it and everything. And that was great. But then when I came to the last one here, then it was just this red pop. And it was tied down, and rocks were trying to hold it down, but then there's just this amazing frame that shoots into this other butte in the background. And for me, these are just moments that you could never create. Like, you either get it or you don't. And so people say, oh, is this fine art photography? And it's like, well, sure. It is something that makes you think. It is something that brings you joy. You know, it is something that makes you want to like ask another question around it. Because here's this man, no one thinks of a porta potty as anything that is desirable of being shot. And I like to think that, like, in this background of expanse with these, pieces of earth that have been around for billions of years, carved and shaved by oceans and wind and everything. And then here's this red little porta potty. So, you know, so, John from Iowa can relieve himself while he's on vacation with his family. To me, is just like, boy, Americana at its finest right here.
Yeah. And the thing is, as we went through each of those, like each of one of these porta potties, like as I see all this together, and I don't know if this has ever been in a gallery altogether, but I almost feel like each one and every one of these porta potties is like a cartoon character.
Yeah.
It's like its own character. It's like, I'm here, I'm the red one, I'm the one by the stone, I'm the one that's tied down, and
I'm camouflage man. It's so granted, I got some really cool shots of Monument Valley that day.
Sure.
But like, these are the ones. Here's the thing. So taking something that juxtaposes, there's many things that people have seen, everyone has seen. And we'll show an example of that later.
Mm-hmm.
Like Monument Valley.
Yeah.
People have seen it. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Arches National Park in Utah. There's that famous arch.
Right.
And everyone's seen the shot of the sunrise coming up through it. I've never been, but I've heard if you go out there, there's like 10 photographers all in one little point trying to get that same shot.
Yeah.
And I would say, is that even a good photograph?
Mm-hmm.
Here's maybe the jerk in me, like, no, it's not, because like it's been seen and done. Of like, it's a beautiful setting.
Sure.
For me, the photograph to get whenever I go there is the photograph of all the people trying to take the photograph of that photograph. Because here's the thing. They have all this gear and equipment. They've trekked all the way there. This gets back to that point of awareness.
Sure.
That they want this one shot, but yet they missed all these cool things.
Yeah.
Getting to that place.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like finding something, showing something that's familiar.
Yeah.
But juxtaposing it in a way that you haven't seen before.
Yeah. And I think even with that juxtaposition, I got to say, and it's true of all of these that we've seen, but the colors that you're bringing out here, man, that you've captured, it is really cool. That's why this stuff, like from a design perspective, when I see this stuff in homes, I'm like, you can't get better color in a space or room. And I know my wife feels this way with what she's done with some of the projects we've had. I mean, this is one of the best ways to bring color to a space is through this fine art.
It really is. And when you see it printed in physical form, like I can show you all digital files, we can even look at it on the screen here in large format.
Yeah.
But until you see it in printed paper, then it's just like, it just takes on a whole different world.
Yeah.
And, when working with clients, and especially with interior designers, I love interior designers as clients. Why? Because they have different clients and different aesthetics and different needs. And so my work fully encapsulates, just about any type of look, feel, need. And, I'd followed some photographers early on that did their things more muted, and I totally parroted that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, I'm like, but that's not what I'm seeing and feeling when I'm shooting this. There is so much joy and like just in wonderment when it's happening, of like seeing it through my eyes. It is bold and it is colorful. And at the same time, I work with my clients. I'm not one of those artists that's like, this is the value of this photo.
Yeah.
If someone comes to me, and I've done it plenty of times, so Jarrod, can we make this blue a little different? Can we turn it a little more navy or a little more turquoise? I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
You want to go grayscale? Great. Like for me, it's not one of, no, this is the piece. I love these pieces.
Sure.
I also run a business that I want to make sure that it is the absolute perfect piece, for a private collector, for a restaurant, or, someone's home, that it matches not only from the design side, but it just then brings everything together.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if we could go to the next one, because I think this is a great segue into just the way that you approach what you do, and um, I'll just let you talk about this, because this one we talked offline before.
Yeah.
This is a remarkable one.
So for the most part, this again goes back to everybody knows the Prada Marfa building out in West Texas. Majority of people don't know that it's actually not in Marfa. It's about 30 miles outside of town in this little speck called Valentine, Texas. But yeah, it's an art installation. Majority of times when people see it, it's shot straight on. It's blue skies, and so majority of people have seen it.
Yeah.
For me, getting out there that day, for me, it's on just like this long stretch of highway. There's nothing else out there. And it was like, all right, let me kind of play with it. So sat out there for a while and really getting it from this angle and start showing. And this is even cropped a little bit more, the 16:9 format that we print this in really just shows how you go down the road and it's just like this one long straight road. And then, capturing a West Texas storm in the background with it coming through, is just one. And then even that little speck, you can see that windmill just tucked a little back there, that little detail, and then all the locks, along the fence of it.
Yeah.
This is one of those that taking something that people know, but showing it in a totally different light.
Yeah.
This is definitely one of the favorites.
Yeah.
For people for sure.
Yeah. And you're right. Just like with the arches and with this, I've seen so many different iterations of that installation, but I had never seen, like, I wouldn't have known there were locks over on that fence,
right,
on that side, or even shot straight on. I mean, yeah, you get the sense that it's out there, but having this road, and like you said, the uncropped version of this, that road really gives you a feel that if you just shoot it straight on, you're not going to get that perspective. So
you miss those plateaus in the background, and really just showing the expanse of West Texas.
Yeah.
With, like, look, this is one of those that, like, I get why people love it. Like, it's a quirky little thing that, that has products inside it. And I mean, it's a cool art installation, but, to be able to bring it to people in a different way is something that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah. And speaking of bringing your work to people, you work with designers, as you mentioned. We've had the fortunate opportunity to work with you on a couple projects. You work with galleries that you also mentioned earlier, private collectors. What is that process like for you as a photographer? I think you kind of started on that, and that it's a very collaborative goal for making something unique for the client.
Absolutely. We were talking about values earlier: collaboration, joy, grace, unlimited excellence. Like, if we aren't playing in those worlds, we're good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm good. I don't, for me, is this really going to be a partnership?
Yeah.
Because I'm entrusting with another person to help in this way. So from like a gallery showroom standpoint, I don't believe in the traditional gallery model. I think from a marketing side, it's a broken system. That's my experience. And it could also be that, for me, I'm earlier into it. And so I want a better say of, look, I know my numbers. This isn't just Jarrod takes pretty pictures.
Yeah.
Like, I know how many leads come in. I know how many convert. I know what my average dollar sale is, so to build something out that is truly a business. And so when I've gone to some galleries before, I've asked them, like, hey, how many times are you pitching 5-figure projects of my work? What is your average dollar sale per piece? How many pieces are you selling a month? And they're like, well, we can't. And I'm like, well, okay, then I'm not going to give you 50% for that. So for me, it's working with people, and it's not just about that margin of it.
Sure.
It's about how invested are you in this? Because this is me.
Right.
This isn't just Jarrod created a business with a trinket. Like, this is a very, very, very personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to partner with people that understand that embrace that, and that sell it in that way.
Yeah.
So, I've been really fortunate of working with Scout Design in Dallas. We have this awesome partnership that, whenever they sell a piece, I go in and give their head guy, Nick, a hug, because it's just like, we just understand it's a place of gratitude.
Yeah.
Because that's the other place. If there isn't gratitude within what we're doing, then it just doesn't make sense.
Sure.
And so, looking at places where there is that, but then also it's the right eyeballs. I think a traditional gallery, a lot of people get intimidated by,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people aren't visuals. So showrooms are fantastic because it's not just a white wall. It's a piece that's fully decked, in a living area or a bedroom area. People can envision them living with this piece. They can see it fully played out.
Yeah.
When we did the piece that we'll show later, we did a piece for y'all for staging for, for a photo shoot. But
Yeah. Chris, let's go ahead and pull that up. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. This next piece of, getting the chance to work with April this was modern, what was it? It was
Modern Coastal. Yeah, Chris, it's the other one. There you go.
Yeah, Modern Coastal, and she was like, "Hey, we want to do something in black and white," and
yeah,
and so I sat and we went through a lot of different images, and I shoot a lot on the West Coast, and we came across this yucca tree that I shot in La Jolla.
Yeah,
oh, this is the one, and so bringing it out there for the photo shoot day and putting it on the mantle, and what it did to just add that transformation to a stunning living area that y'all created. That mantle area was just insane, and just the details in this brought it together. But this was definitely one of collaborating with someone to get the right piece.
Yeah.
Not just something that's in the collection. People see the work online, and I tell people, I'm like, that's about 10% of what I have.
Yeah.
Those are the greatest hits. For me, it's sitting down and really understanding. So sitting with a private collector or sitting with a designer and really understanding what they're looking for, as opposed to just selling what I have.
Right.
When you get to understand people's whys, when you find the right piece, it is like, oh my gosh, this is it.
Yeah.
This is what we've been waiting for.
Yeah. And to your credit, I got to say, when we first started working together, collaborating to find the right piece for that living room, for that photo shoot, my wife, our principal designer, April, she had already met you, had talked about kind of the goal. I had not formally met you yet. And I remember she came to me and said, hey, talked with Jarrod and went over kind of our ideas and goals, and he shared some thoughts too, and provided some options for us to kind of consider and look over. And one of the things that was remarkable about that was that every single piece that I saw, I was like, we were torn trying to figure out the right piece, because I felt really listened to April on what she wanted to do with that space. And I was like, this is a tough decision because you presented a lot of options. So I think just from our own personal experience working with you, your ability to listen, we've experienced that firsthand, because you gave us a tough choice, and this piece ended up just being terrific. And when we saw it, I was like, that's something unique. I've never seen that before. Kind of going back to, you've never been here before. So, to your credit, Jarrod, from a collaboration perspective, that just hit things out of the park for us right from our first interaction. And then on a more recent project, Chris, if you want to go to that other one, we got to work with you on this piece, which is
This piece is bananas.
yeah, talk about this one.
This piece was in New York at the Nike lab in Soho, and they were closing it in 2022. And I walked in there with my camera, and they're sensed of like, oh, this guy actually shoots, and they're like, hey, and I think I was wearing some stupidly expensive Nikes as well, so it's like
That helps.
yeah, game recognizes game, maybe, I don't know, or like idiot recognizes idiot from the standpoint of what you spent on those shoes. But they were telling me it was closing, and they're like, hey, do you want to come in the back and shoot our inspiration boards? And I was like, is that a trick question? So I go back there and I just took a couple of shots, but like this was in then. So this is one of those things that's no longer there. And this is a timeline of not just Nike, but of, you were talking about pieces. You can look at this piece and find something new every single time. Granted, it has so many iconic shoes in it, but it also is a timeline of culture. There are magazine ads. There are album covers. There's a photo of John Lennon, not of John Lennon, of Elton John in Air Jordan 1s. That blueprint that you see is a diagram on the genesis of acid house music in New York. I mean, you get the Mars Blackmon Nike ads. You get the first Air Max. Of course, right in the middle is, probably one of the most iconic shoes ever, that first Air Jordan. But I'm like, and just the timeline that it goes through, that is like so much fun. And, to sit with y'all and discussing, this child's room.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, I have the perfect piece.
Yeah.
It is the perfect piece.
Yeah. It's something else. And again, the color here, I mean, when I saw this, I got to walk our client's house for the photo shoot when we actually shot the project, and I walked into that room, and going back to what you said, turning a corner and seeing something. Well, in that moment, I turned the corner of that bedroom, and I saw this in the boys' room, above the bed, and in its large scale.
Yeah, it's 60 by 40.
Yeah,
so we're talking 5 feet by almost 3.5 feet.
Yeah. And I was trying to do videography like of the house, and I'm back there with my 24 millimeter lens, and I'm like, I can't get far back enough in this room to properly get a sense of what this looks like on the wall and the scale and how impactful that is. That's going to be such a cool piece, for a lifetime. It's remarkable.
Well, so, and with that, when we were just talking about both of these pieces and what it's like for you I just find the lost art of the clarity of communication between people. So many people want to be heard, but are they listening and hearing the other person? And, I know the difference in working with clients where there is that type of communication. It fills my abundant tank so much. I gotta say, like earlier this week, my abundant tank has been pretty empty because I've just come across people that they only want to communicate by text, and they'll want something, and I'll source something and then get it to them, and then I just get ghosted. And I'm like, if you're not interested, that's fine. But I'm like, how are we going about, like, I went into business for myself to be able to, I had no idea that, but all I ever wanted to do was sit across from a like-minded partner and talk about the joys of what the work is like. And explaining it to other people and letting them get a chance to see it and feel it. Like, if you would have told me that 3 years ago, I'm like, man, that sounds awesome, but like, that's not a reality.
Right.
But I also know it also takes a lot of work to build these types of relationships and to communicate with clarity so that the other person gets what they need.
Yeah. Well, we have enjoyed working with you, and I know we have future things lined up, and I'm looking forward to continuing that and building this relationship between us, not just from a professional business perspective, but totally, even just on a personal level,
Yeah.
it's been awesome. Now, one of the last things I want to ask you is, do you do anything that's exclusive, like, that is just, me client, or, what, anything like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, majority of my pieces are what they call open editions,
Okay.
where there's unlimited prints too. It's interesting. The one that we just showed of the black and white yucca, that is a limited print.
Okay.
The first one that there's just one of 5 of
Wow.
that size. And so that price goes up considerably.
Yeah.
So there's certain pieces to that, but also what I do is that I do 8 commissions a year. That's it. I try to do like 2 per season, and it's not something, I don't go and shoot your family portrait or anything like that. If you want to get someone in your off-whites down by the beach, I can get you an amazing portrait photographer. For me, what I do is that I will sit down with someone that has a ranch or a family home or something that elicits a feeling for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I interview them and I tell them, I'm like, hey, I got to see if you're a fit for me.
Right.
And a lot of times they're like, who is this guy? But they get an understanding of, so it's not just as simple as, oh, what is it that you want? Let me go shoot it.
Mm.
I will sit down with that person 2 or 3 times to get a feeling of what it is about this thing, about this place, about this moment that means so much. Again, the why.
Yeah.
So to get what it's like to, take your shoes off, and let your feet in the grass of your summer home, what the breeze feels like, what this 3rd generation ranch in East Texas meant to you and your cousins.
Mm-hmm.
So that when I then go, I will go for probably like 5 days to a week.
Wow.
Because for me, it is important to live in it, to understand it, to get where the light is. One day I may look at something, but then 2 days later, all it takes is something that is just like 2 feet to the right of like, oh no, this is the shot.
Yeah.
Because for me, the idea is, it is important that I take something that is in your heart, transpose it through mind, up to the brain, through the eye, through the lens, so that when it is printed in this large format on your wall, that every time you turn the corner, you see it, you have the same feeling as if you were back at that swimming hole with your cousin when you were 13 years old on your grandparents' ranch.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot of time, and it's a lot of my time, and it's a lot of your time. And so I do 8 of those a year. And when we get to do those, I don't promote those. I don't show those photos. Obviously, when people are questioning, I'll sit down and show them what I've done, but I don't do online promotion of it, because those projects are for myself and for the client to see. And I do get their permission to show other prospects of those, but those are areas that I want to keep it true in that nature of a true one of one, that they never get shown to. They definitely don't get put on a website for sale of anything. So they're very, very special and treated in such a way.
Man, that's fantastic. I can hear just the care you have for what you do, and making sure that it matches what folks are looking for, but also really probably challenges them on thinking about things in a different way as they view that. And it's just, I can't say enough incredible things about your work. And I would hope anyone listening would dive deeper into what you've done, because there's a whole lot that we've only scratched the surface of what you've done. So for folks who do want to go do that deeper dive, or even just, hey, I'm into this, I want to know, how do I get in touch with Jarrod? Where do I find his work? How do I start that process? Where should they go?
Yeah. The good thing about a personal brand is that I keep it simple. It's just first and last name. So it's jarrodoram.com. There is a connect button on there. Instagram, same thing, is just at Jarrod Oram, all lowercase. And so, yeah, that's the best. I'm very connected within it, especially when it comes to, I'll have people reach out to me of, I have an anniversary coming up. My wife is from LA. What do you have? And it's like, take a seat. Let's
Yeah.
go for a ride.
Oh yeah.
I'm being in Texas. I have a lot of Texas photography. People in Texas love Texas photography, but it's not Texas photography.
Yeah.
Of course, I have some shots, some blue bonnets and everything like that. I do have a black and white Longhorn in my portfolio that sells really well because, again, I know the client as well.
Right.
But yeah, it is definitely finding those areas and knowing the client, what they
Yeah.
like and everything, for sure.
Awesome. Well, Jarrod, thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, Adam, I can't thank you enough, man. It's an honor to work with y'all and to see the amazing work that y'all do and how it aligns of, I could only hope that my pieces would go into such visually stunning places as the ones y'all are creating and
Oh.
everything. So
Well, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
thanks.